Right, so this past Sunday at AEW Dynasty 2025, we of course saw AEW make a very regrettable mistake when they refused to change plans and had it so that Jon Moxley retained his AEW World title over his challenger Swerve Strickland. I don't need to say it again, I've said it 100 times in the last few videos, but I will say it again, this Jon Moxley World title reign in AEW has absolutely sucked and it has been absolutely cooked. And Swerve Strickland winning the title at Dynasty was a perfect time to pivot and get away from what AEW's original plan was, which seems to apparently still be the plan for the AEW World title, and if recent reports are to be believed, the AEW World title scene is truly cooked and may not recover, as AEW followed up their disastrous Dynasty event with an episode of AEW Dynamite last night on Wednesday, and I think this was definitely a weird follow-up, a weird episode of AEW Dynamite, and one of the worser episodes of AEW Dynamite in 2025 so far. And let me tell you that 98% of that is completely to do with the world title scene, which just continues to disappoint. So we're going to talk about all that and more, so like the video and let's talk about AEW Dynamite from last night, as we open the show with a Death Riders and Jon Moxley backstage promo as they address the recent events from Dynasty and questions why the greatest roster ever assembled under the AEW umbrella can't get their act together and beat him, says he's going scorched earth and tells the Young Bucks to be careful and watch any moves they make. And then right after that, to open the show, Jon Moxley comes out to face Katsuyori Shibata for the opening match. And it's a shame because this match on paper, maybe only about 6 months ago, would be a match that completely appeals to me and any other AEW fan watching the show. But Jon Moxley's world title reign has been so dry, and his wrestling style is even drier currently, and his matches are so damn boring that this match doesn't even move me anymore just on paper. And as for the match itself, it totally sucked and it was a total dud. Just a slow, sluggish, heatless match that only went about 5 minutes, with Moxley getting the win obviously, and Katsuyori Shibata not coming out of this looking too good, to be honest. A very mundane and boring opener to the April 9th edition of AEW Dynamite, which by the way, this was on my birthday yesterday on April 9th, I forgot to mention, so thank you AEW for this great birthday present of a not so great AEW Dynamite episode. And yeah, following the win, Moxley and Marina Shafir, who's accompanying him, leave the area, and the Young Bucks music then hits, and they enter the ring. They then get on the mic and say the whole world is wondering why they cost Swerve Strickland the AEW World Championship. To be honest, I absolutely am, because it still makes no sense to me. And as the Young Bucks would go on to explain that they were doing it for Hangman Adam Page, by the end of this segment, it still didn't make any sense to me. They said they did it for Hangman, never forgetting who their friends are, and says to Moxley and the Death Riders that what they did for them can be looked at as a peace offering. He invites Jon Moxley and the Death Riders to then come back out and talk business. Bro, they were literally just already there. Why are you asking for them now? Why didn't you just come out when they were already there? But instead, it's surprisingly Kenny Omega's music that hits as he makes his way out to the ramp to cut a promo on the Young Bucks, and man, this has got to be one of the weirdest promo segments I've ever seen, especially coming from Kenny Omega. Omega, of course, has some problems with the Young Bucks, as the last time the Young Bucks were here in AEW, they were attacking an injured Kenny Omega off of his stretcher, so he must have a lot to address here, but apparently not, as Kenny Omega in this promo kind of seemed like he didn't even really want to be there. It felt like a phoned in promo. He was talking about poo. That's all I can really say about it. Omega then gets in the ring to go and fight the Young Bucks before the Rainmaker Kazuchika Okada's music hits and he runs down to the ring. Please don't tell me Okada and the Young Bucks are still aligned with each other. Please don't tell me we're still in this EVP's garbage. But before the three of them can do anything to Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland's music hits and him and Nana hit the ring and clear the ring of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, as Swerve pronounces it buck hunting season, and then out comes Pac, who is out now for his match with Swerve Strickland that is taking place on this show. Another match that on paper should be pretty damn solid, and for the first couple of minutes, it absolutely was. Swerve Strickland and Pac, of course, we know how good of work as they can be. However, only a couple of minutes into the match, Swerve buckle bombs Pac into the corner, and Pac seemingly injures his ankle in this moment here, and you can tell instantly that he is legitimately injured, as there's a quick pause in the match while Pac is tended to on the outside before he gets back in the ring, and they quickly go to the finish with Swerve Strickland hitting the Swerve Stomp to get the win over Pac. And yeah, this injury with Pac is legitimate, like I said, and it really bears into question what the future of the AEW Trios titles is going to be. Of course, he is 1/3 of the Trios champions alongside Claudio and Utah, so I just wonder what's going to happen with that. But overall, what an absolute shit show of a first 30 minutes of AEW Dynamite. Horrible match to open the show with Moxley and Katsuyori Shibata, a horrible promo segment with the Bucks and Kenny Omega, and then a match that went wrong with an injury botch with Swerve Strickland and Pac. This entire thing has left me very confused on what the actual status of the AEW World title is, because it seems as though they're now pivoting away from having Hangman and Swerve be part of that storyline, and now Kenny Omega is involved and Okada is involved. What the actual fuck is going on? And if you didn't hear me say earlier in the video, this was easily the worst part of the show, and this show was entirely dragged down by the moments with the world title and main event scenes going on. As the rest of the show I don't think was actually that bad. We had the 400,000 explosive 8-man tag match up next after this, which was pretty alright with the babyface team coming out on top. Funny moment when Ricochet was getting bold shamed by the 4 babyfaces. Chris Statlander and Thunder Rosa had a pretty solid match for the Owen Hart Foundation Women's Tournament, with Chris Statlander getting the win. Chris Statlander slowly but surely has turned into one of my favorites in AEW. There was great segments with the Hurt Syndicate and MJF, who's trying to get in on the Hurt Syndicate. It's absolutely great stuff, I gotta say. Probably the best part of the show has been the MJF and the Hurt Syndicate stuff, I would say. Then there was TV time with the Learning Tree, where Chris Jericho kinda crashed out at Big Bill and Brian Keith, said he needed to leave for a while, said the F word, he said fuck on live TV, I couldn't believe it. Which genuinely, I can't remember the last time I heard that on AEW TV since MJF called Tony Khan a fucking mark. And yeah, Chris Jericho crashes out, he smashes the TV monitor, says he's disappointed in the Learning Tree, and says that until he changes that, I think it's best that he leaves, and so he does, as he leaves the entire arena. Who knows if Chris Jericho is actually gone or not? I have a feeling that this is going to be just another Chris Jericho gag, where he is back the very next week and acting completely fine again. That's what I think it's going to be, and it's going to be some big inside wrestling insider joke about how wrestlers are always quitting and always retiring and then back the next week or whatever, some dumb bullshit like that. But hey, even this part of the show was better than the world title scenes part of the show, and that says a whole fucking lot, doesn't it? And the main event of the show was the Ops of Samoa Joe and Hook up against Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. This match was fine, it wasn't incredible, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but just Samoa Joe alone, his presence is adding to this feud and adding to the world title scene, and Samoa Joe and Hook obviously do get the win here, as after the match the Death Riders try to attack the Ops, but the attacks are able to get rid of them, and on the mic Samoa Joe makes it simple and clear that the Ops are coming for the Trios World Championships, and for the love of God, let's just give them these belts next week. Pac is injured now, let's just do it while we can and give them the belts. But however, I have a feeling that's not going to happen, because as we know, AEW doesn't like to pivot away from things, especially when it comes to this Death Rider storyline. And a recent report from Fightful Select can kind of confirm that, as Fightful reported that Swerve was apparently never going to win the world title at any moment, at Dynasty was never planned to, and that this Moxley world title reign is going to be a lengthy one, which very likely means it's just whenever Darby Allin comes back. No actual schedule to it, no date in mind or pay-per-view, just whenever Darby Allin comes back from climbing Everest is probably when Moxley loses this world title. And yeah, sucks. It just sucks. This was the worst episode of AEW Dynamite in a couple of months, I would say. AEW were on a really good streak with their weekly shows, and it really feels like that recent Dynasty main event has just completely brought down the entire company. And if this report is true, that this Jon Moxley world title reign is going to be a lengthy one and ain't ending anytime soon, then man, the world title scene is absolutely cooked. It seems as though Swerve and Adam Page are doing their own thing right now with the Young Bucks. Adam Page obviously is in the Owen Hart tournament, so he could still win that and challenge Mox at All In, I suppose. But who knows what he's going to do with the Young Bucks and Swerve Strickland, if their feud is going to continue into All In like they teased it to. But I don't see the point of having them wrestle if it isn't for the world title, unless maybe they just shoehorn Jon Moxley into that feud to make it a triple threat, which it wouldn't surprise me if AEW tried to shoehorn Jon Moxley into these other feuds kind of going on around the world title with Kenny and Swerve and the Bucks and Hangman Page, etc. Because like beyond the trios titles being lost to the Ops, what is there for Jon Moxley to do then? Because if Kenny and Swerve and Okada and Hangman are all just fighting amongst themselves, then who is Jon Moxley going to face? I have a feeling that they'll just throw Jon Moxley into that crowd and just have loads of dumb multi-man matches with Jon Moxley sneaking the wins. Hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully they can come up with something more compelling, but I don't know who else there is left on the roster that's been built up in a way where they're credible challengers to Jon Moxley. And the ones who are, like I said, are fighting amongst themselves away from the world title right now. So who knows what the fuck is even going to happen for the next couple of months until Jon Moxley loses this world title. Imagine Chris Jericho, his whole thing for why he left is because he's going to come back next week and make a big joke about the fact that he was gone for so long and reflecting on what he really needed, and that's the world title, and he challenges Moxley for the world title as the next challenger. Imagine that is the direction. I know that probably isn't, but I'm just putting that out into existence because it could be worse. It could be. But yeah, overall for this episode of AEW Dynamite from last night, I thought it was pretty average, very much dragged down from the first half an hour of the show. But let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode of AEW Dynamite, and leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and comment down below what videos you want to see next, and as well as your thoughts on the current state of the AEW world title scene and how it is just so damn cooked. Subscribe, notifications on so you never miss a video. I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye and keep on rolling.